Hello, good evening. How are you doing, Claire?
Not too bad. Good evening to you, Jim. It's morning here.
Oh, of course it is. It's indeed. And hello to everybody else who is joining us or watching this later on day 3 of the 5-day challenge. And I hope you're enjoying the explorations that we have been showing you the paths of, pointing them in a direction or other. And I hope your imaginations and curiosity has taken you all over the place as you question and explore further. So today's tasks and focus is on natural attractions. And so Claire, you have put together the tasks. Perhaps you'd like to explore a little bit more of that.
Okay. I suppose I'll start with what natural attractions are. To me, it's always about what naturally emerges, like without us thinking about it too much. And of course, we can always come back to the thinking, okay, I like this particular thing or experience because of whatever reason. But I think the point is that our experiences are consistent with our thinking. So the thinking can come later when you look from hindsight. But if the thinking comes first, sometimes I'll be like, let me think about whether that's the actual reason I attracted to these experiences or places or things. So yeah, I think that's the most important thing for me in finding your natural attractions. And therefore, I ask people, what feelings and bodily sensations do you feel instead of thinking about why you like it first? When I directed them to find a place in nature or find a indoor plant they like to do the task with. Yeah, and of course, one deeper aspect of natural attractions is about, okay, we like this part of nature, and what does it actually mean? Because with deepening your relationship or each individual's relationship with the natural world, it's about see our places in the natural world, isn't it? And with that in mind, then what does natural attractions mean? So then that comes to the bonus task is when you reflect the part of nature back to you, I like this part of nature because, and then you go, okay, I like myself because I think for a lot of people, they'll go, I think first of all, the brain might go, okay, that's a bit interesting. I've never done this before. But I think, again, if people have a sense of openness or curiosity, they'll go, okay, never mind, never done it before. Feel it's not something I'm used to, of course, but maybe there's a golden nugget there. I can go in and find out what the exercise is actually revealing to me. So I think that's what, in general, that's what nature is. If we know the process, know the framework to dive deeper, right? Because as children, I think that we naturally are attracted to go into the natural world. But as children, we perhaps were not intellectually equipped to explore nature in such a way. And I'm not saying that equip yourself with a method or a framework to explore it in an intellectual way is better than without a method. It's just, I think, for many of us, I am one of those that as I grew up, I think I disconnected myself from the natural world. And it was through this intellectual process or framework, then I go, okay, it's actually useful because when I had my pivotal moment in my life, I was very analytical in my way of being. So this intellectual framework actually helped me go, okay, now my intellectual brain can relax. I know what it is doing, and I can just go deeper. Yeah.
It's really interesting. So leading by senses first, and then questioning, if you wish, with the intellect to strengthen that and to understand why afterwards, rather than what we tend to do, either go in with an expectation that you know what you're going to be attracted to, and then sensing towards that as a sort of confirmation bias, perhaps. And so, is that kind of quite tricky to learn which bit you're actually trusting in? So, I mean, as an example, and if you walk into a room that's full of lovely pot plants, and you're invited to, connect with nature, choose a focal point, there might be all sorts of intellectual things. Oh, I'm going to choose the brightest flower, or the one that I know attracts the most insects, or whatever it might be. You feel, oh, I would like to be attracted to this, and of course you can end up in front of that particular one. So maybe you could talk about how to sense into the actual true natural attraction, and to allow that desire and attraction to come through from the sensing part.
I think, first of all, if that, for example, I walk into a greenhouse full of lovely pot plants, there's no ulterior motive. Okay, I need to buy one so that I need to, grow it and then look after it. Just to pick one, because when you go to nature, for example, to me anyway, I don't need to go to nature to buy something. It's just there, right? I think the best thing, people say, the best things in life are often free, right? So you go to nature and go, wow, here is a lovely public park, and I don't have to pay a ticket to get in every time. How lovely is that? And if I have to use your example, okay, here is a greenhouse. I'm just going to go in, and there is really no ulterior motive. I don't need to win a prize per se, and I don't need to be complimented for doing such a good job, etc., etc. It's just silly for me, for my own enjoyment, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think,
yes.
So I think with that, then it comes a lot easier that you drop everything that you need to achieve or whatever. It's just there for you to enjoy, for you to feel good about this plant, rather than the act of picking up that plant. It's about the enjoyment. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about people following the exercise, and with that intent to actually be aware of their natural attractions. And I think that's precisely the shift in awareness that you're talking about, is at the same time as recognizing that it's an exercise and the invitation is to go and explore natural attraction. At the same time, it's like, but don't have the expectations, don't go into that exercise with, I must, or I feel I should connect in this way or be attracted in this way. So it's really about softening and being aware of what is actually coming to you, rather than presupposing what is going to be attractive to you.
Yeah.
Has that always been easy for you? That's
I think
unshackling.
Historically, obviously, no, because I think with natural attractions, even though we, in the context of our 5-day exploration, the context is the natural world and the pot plant, but the ultimate intention, of course, is to transfer or to transport the experiences that you have with the natural world to your everyday experiences, right? So with that, I would say it hasn't not always been easy at all, because I'm a human being. I grew up in a human family, and I have been conditioned, right, in other societies, schools, etc., etc. my pivotal point in my cancer recovery really shifted my thinking a lot. Again, it has a lot to do with my time spent in nature. And also, I was very fortunate to meet the lady called Tabitha Jane. She helped me enormously to deepen my connection with nature, and everything just unfold from there. So no, it was not easy. And I so resonate with what you said about we can often come in with a unconscious even expectation, because sometimes we just go, okay, what can I do to to make this attractive from my human point of view, right? Like you ignore your own natural instinct in a way, because it got buried and buried and buried by all the other things that we were conditioned to be more important, right? And but underneath it all, if you take a moment, maybe you need to take more than one moment, you go, actually, there's something going on underneath. This is not what I actually liked. I persuaded myself that this is what I liked, but actually, no, right? If I can just choose freely, without any conditioning, I would do this, right?
Yeah, you just made me think about well, plant shops would do it for me, or a bookshop or any shop that you make a selection, and you're taking it to the checkout counter or whatever, and you see another one like it, you go, oh, actually maybe I'm not too keen on that first one. Actually, I like that one. So that the first thing isn't always the one, perhaps, and to soften into that, and sense the perhaps more subtle attractions underneath as a starting place. And so obviously that's a kind of a challenge in itself. Can you think of any other challenges about in following natural attractions that pop to mind?
I think if we really want to go to the deep end, right? Because as humans, I know it's not everybody, but I think a lot of people can relate to that. We do things to please other people, right? One of it could be to avoid confrontation, right? Because as a female, I think I still am conditioned to avoid conflicts if I can. But there's a preconception of, okay, there is going to be a conflict, right? Or maybe that there is gonna, like you saying no to that, which is my natural attraction for a situation, could cause unpleasant reactions or emotions from other people. There's a preconception because that's my conditioning, right? My parents go, okay, if people request such and such from you, you've got to help others and don't cause conflict and confrontation. That's not what exactly they said, but that's how I was conditioned because I watched that's how they behave in the household, right? But is this really what I am attracted to do in a situation? And of course, I'm not specifying the situation, and I'm not giving anybody any magic pills and go, hey, you should always say no, right? The situations can be very, very complex. But I'm just saying that, and also by reflecting upon a personal situation, which is, again, my preconception of a conflict. All right, I'm just going to take a sip of water.
I was just taking the unfair advantage and jumping in there. So carry on.
So again, it's okay. But in that moment, I really sensed I need to trust my own instinct and really say no, right? There's no big deal, but I just decided not to say yes in that situation. And the reaction was actually, and I actually communicated my reason. I said, I don't know why I said no to that decision that I just communicated, but as a mother, I'm just going to trust my own instinct, and I just don't feel comfortable in that situation. And I explained that I said, I realize that my instinct, they're pretty accurate these days. So sorry about saying no. I mean, there was not like all smiles coming out, obviously, but there was no big reaction. People just go, that's okay, I'll just do another arrangement. And some other people just go, it's good that you communicate how you feel and just really respect that. So I'm like, okay, that's great. Like at the back of my mind, I was dramatizing, like, okay, I'm going to say no to this person who is very important in my life, which I don't say a lot of no to, because that person has helped me greatly in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say no to this person and to this event. But I was just, right, imagining all the consequences myself at the back of my mind, which wasn't too dramatic. Otherwise, I would not perhaps have the gut to say no to this situation. But hey, it's like, okay, that was actually a great way of reinforcing for me. Okay, you're getting there, you're stepping up to say no to people who are important in your life that you don't need to please all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, I presume that comes from an ever increasing faith and reliance of your instincts and your attractions, because of how you've worked with them. Now, obviously, we all experience urges which can be taken as attraction. So how do we develop that reliability? How do we recognize a positive attraction, a beneficial attraction? I mean, does that blend in? Does that weave into natural presence and body? Is it working with other things in mind?
Yeah, I think so. How do we blend it in? I think there's so many layers in it. I think first of all, of course, we need to be aware and present, right? Because when it comes to, for example, something we are feeling there is a dilemma coming, but the dilemma could be so embedded in our conditioning, right? We just naturally go, okay, I'm just going to go to my default one, even though it's not my natural attraction. But without awareness and presence, you cannot feel the bodily sensations and that sense of unpleasant feelings inside you, right? Like I understand that we are talking about natural attractions, but in this case, it's the other side of the coin, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So without presence, obviously, you cannot tell that there are feelings and sensations arising. And without that groundedness in your own body, you could not tell, okay, actually, there's one option for me to default to my conditioned answer, but there's actually another option for me to follow my natural attractions and say no. And of course, Michael soften that no, because communication is always important, right? And also for people who are close to you in your life. So yeah.
And so that ties in nicely, I think, with you're talking about being in I think I referred to it as being in the witness state, taking that distance back, so that you have that you can allow the awareness of the other option. It doesn't have to be that way. And by creating that pause of self-awareness, opening up to being able to compare if I follow one with this default, this previous conditioned, accepted and acquired conditioned response, or even if it's hasn't been acquired, and even if it's a response or a reaction that I have previously developed to keep me feeling safe and comfortable in a previous situation that this one resembles enough of, for me to follow that same path, even though it might not be in my best interests. I can follow that, but when you take that step back, it's okay. Well, I can see the consequences. What else am I sensing? What am I leaning towards? What other small things are appearing to me through whichever of the senses? And how might that alternative way, more life affirming, we were talking about that yesterday, I think, as well, wasn't it, the day before? And what would that effect be? And I think with the reactive, protective, less life affirming responses and reactions, perhaps, is that again, the correctness of the motivation and the intent. What is it about that default? If that default is reacting protectively, defensively, aggressively, angrily, or the opposite, if it's retreat, inappropriate retreat, or whatever it is that from a place of love? If you are overbearing and going over the top in whatever way, or using power over, then stop using the power over, because that's probably coming from a place of fear. And if you step back from that fear, what is then am I able to consider as an attraction? For example, if somebody has done something awful to you in your perception, you might want to be glad at their misfortune. You might want to create misfortune for them. You might want to be difficult, get revenge or whatever. And that you might even justify that logically as comeuppance or prevention of further damage. And if that's the case, then okay. But so to be clear about the intentions and to soften into the sensing of it. Okay, is that actually true? Is that correct? And am I drawn in other places, in other directions? And of course, tying in with the natural body as well.
Yeah. I think it's if I want to be more specific, and also using your language, it is about the fear of saying no, isn't it? Because you don't want to hurt people's feelings. You want to feel the relationship is tight, right, and close, because you have built a good relationship with that person. But I think the natural world, including us here, that the way we use the word interconnected, what does it actually mean, right? It's actually means it's from a feeling place, to put it very simply. Is okay, your mind is thinking, I don't want to hurt this person's feeling, which is positive, okay? And there's a construct there, identification there. But when you actually drop that, because if it's actually true, right, the construct will not matter. It's just always going to be true, right?
Yeah.
But I think for most of us, and particularly for the patterns that we often struggle with, we just sometimes don't feel like we don't have enough confidence. If it's going to be true, it's going to be true when I drop that construct, when I drop that identification, right?
Yeah. And also that highlights also the fear of saying yes.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And for me, I've worked on myself. I've seen a pattern of compromising myself, right? Because I knew that if I said yes, I can't control the outcome, right? If I said yes, I would absolutely hate myself. Like, why are you saying yes? Why are you compromising yourself again, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, then there's times when it would be a good thing to say yes, but you say no out of fears, whether that's if you're just feeling under the weather, or you're feeling anxious or depressed, and it's like, no, even in the heart, you might go, well, yes, it would be good to go and say yes to whatever that invitation was, or whether it's just cooking yourself a good meal. But there's that kind of, but no, it's like whatever reason, or the fears, or whatever is facing it. So of course you then have to do the same approach with looking at the, with that softer transition into a yes rather than a no. And as you say, awareness and presence are feeding into that all the time.
And also don't take baby steps, like, okay, I just want to say no to that situation, to that invite, to the party. It's like, we're still in the pandemic, but we have little gatherings, right? Because of whatever narratives I've got going on, whatever past unpleasant feelings I got going on. But again, just if I let go of that, what do I actually want? Right? What do I actually want to choose? It's actually, I want human connection. I want to feel, maybe I want to amend whatever happened in the past. And I actually really want that. And then taking the baby steps, right? To whatever degree you can feel comfortable with. That's all you can do. And again, our human lives are messy. There's no one magic formula, right? We're just talking about, okay, what are the things that really people can pay attention to really to that truth, isn't it? Because the construct and all the narratives, we think they are true, but quite often they aren't. So what happens?
Absolutely.
So what happens when you drop that for a moment? Just for a moment. You don't have to drop it forever. Right?
Well, and maybe you get to the point where you think, yes, I can, and maybe it'd be beneficial. But certainly the thing about discerning the truth. I've certainly been in situations, or reflected on situations where I thought, I thought that I was attracted to do that, whatever it was, or towards this choice, out of good reasons, and from that place of connection, and then realizing, actually, no, that's not true, is it, Jim? When you peel away that layer, actually, no, that's not quite what you were convinced it was, and convinced yourself that it was. So the wiliness of the brain, and this again is about protection, isn't it, in a way, because it's about stepping away from the familiar systems and the etiquettes and the protocols that we have acquired, as you've been talking about. Because once we let go of those, then we're in unfamiliar territory, which can be quite, it is going to be, have a little bit of reaction to it, isn't it? And as you say, baby steps, once you get out there, and this isn't just about nature connection or nature communication, of course, it's about anything. You just do it bit by bit until you become more comfortable and realize the effects far outweigh any of the risks, and often you realize that the risks are far less than you perceive them to be in the first place. So bit by bit, with presence and awareness.
I mean, and I think using my own example is like, there's always going to be a risk, and what this life is about, right? And when you say it's not just limited to natural attractions, I was going to say it's life attractions, right? Like because again, in English, I go, okay, in my communication, more and more, I use nature and life together, because that way people can think about, okay, they are together. We're not just talking about natural world and go, this only happens when you go outside or do it with a plant. We're just really transfer all the experiences across life.
Yes, which links actually to my experiences of the exercise, which I had to do I will admit, I had to do a little bit ad hoc. And I did it, I cheated somewhat, and I did it retrospectively. But the reason for that is because it's been a massively hectic day, as I was telling you about a little bit. And so I lent into being attracted in behavior. So there was a particular time this afternoon when I was hearing something from somebody which I was finding incredibly triggering. And I was on the inside, I just couldn't believe that this person could take the stance that they were. I was mixed with full of emotions of outrage, disappointment, and all this kind of stuff. And I could feel those emotions bubbling up, and I'm kind of aware of them. And I'm thinking, yeah, right now I'm attracted to just go and look out of the window. And I just kind of discreetly, I didn't kind of humph and go, right, I'm going to ignore you, turn my back and go out the window. But I just removed myself as gracefully as I could. And I just looked out of the window and I considered, right, yes, my attraction is to not fuel this conflict, because it's not beneficial anyway. Recognizing the options that I could have done and historically probably would have done, and I would have brought challenge to them there and then. I can do that very effectively, I think, not always most beneficially. And for that reason, the shift or the listening of the attraction of the life affirming, nature affirming, the best outcome for all involved in this situation is to not do that, is to just take calming influence from looking out the window. When I look out the window, I look over a field and I see trees and loveliness, and just allow that to be witness, and also to dive back into nature, body and presence, and allow the emotions just to be taken away. And I was able to turn around and dive back into what I was being met with, without going down what I thought to be the wrong route, the more destructive route. So yes, it was very interesting to have that little twist on the approach, but apply the nature attraction approach to it, and as you were explaining through the exercise. And how about yourself? What would you like to say? Anything come to mind about your experience of it?
If I have to go strictly according to the exercises, that I didn't, but I did illustrate the example in the bonus task about that I was attracted to a tree because it was strong and tall, and I reflected on myself. And of course, then what the statement means, and how I could express that I am strong and tall in a way that I actually feel resonating and comfortable. But that was a while ago when I set up the task. Specifically, I think every day, I think I like almost every important actions that I feel, okay, there's a hesitance there, and I'm not quite sure. I always tune in, like take a moment, because lives these days are, okay, pandemic, you got to look after the kids, and then help your partner when he's very busy, and also run your business. And this week we are like, it's pretty full on. Okay, then so do I need to do this today, for example? Another important thing that you conceptually think is important. And then just sit with yourself and just take a moment of breathing in and out, and just let your body soften, and just really tune into the answers. Actually, no, I don't need to write another post on LinkedIn today. I don't need to take a snippet out from the recording to market today. Yes, I know I did it yesterday. I know doing it consistently is very, very important as a small business owner, but I've taken the moment to sit with that decision, and I must trust that I don't need to do all that, and I didn't. So to me, it's there was, like I think for you in your situation was quite a big one, like in your life, and I think for you it's actually a pivotal moment. I want to congratulate you that you took a different route to deviate from your conditioning, from the patterns that you are used to. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm happy to say that deviation happened a while ago.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So for me, it's I mean, I was conditioned to work hard. I mean, I'm sure most of us are, right? We weren't born with silver spoons. Even people who are born with silver spoons, they perhaps were conditioned to work even harder than us. I've got no idea, right? But with my transformation, recovery from illness, etc., that of, I have to really trust, because I think that's another important element of following your natural attractions, because underneath all the patterns that we build upon ourselves through conditioning, underneath it all, there's some attractions in there. And like you said, it can be unfamiliar, right? It can be something that is not consistent with what has been taught. Because in business, you've got to be consistent, right? You've got to show up every day. You've just got to do it just because that's what successful people have been doing. You look at, okay, they're earning $2 million a year. Look, they show up every single day, even though they have COVID, right? Right? And I mean, it's their approach. It worked for them. But it is really what I am attracted to do. And I'm not dismantling that, saying that it's total BS, right? Like, I have been trying to be consistent as much as I can, but realizing that no one else has the same life conditions as me, right? And I am the only one knows truly what works for me, like in a true sense, not the expert, like I get it. Like, it's not because I'm less committed. It's not because I'm lazy. When I just take a moment to let go of all this consistency or the commitment that I want to impose on myself, what do I actually want to do with my marketing activities on that day? The answer yesterday was no. I did not need to do all the work. So I just go, okay, I'm just going to trust that. Because without that, every single little step of trusting, right? We're not saying 100% of the time. For me, it's like, if I could trust 9 out of 10 times, I'm doing a pretty good job, right?
Well, yeah, 9 out of 10. Yeah. Are you sure? 9.5, maybe. I think I'm happy with accepting a little bit lower than that myself. But what came to mind is the phenomenon, I suppose, whereby in business, it's because we're talking about the examples of previous, or current major earners or whatever. And what's coming to mind is, yes, and of course, the way that they have been doing what they are doing, or have been doing, or did do, was in this incredibly destructive 200 years of profligate, just digging everything up, using it, chucking away the waste. And so obviously the way that we approach business and commerce over the last 200 years has not been great. So we should probably question the methods and the approaches of that time to see what is relevant and useful, and dismiss the rest, because there will be value in the way that people have approached things, or capitalism has been approached up till now. I think there's a lot at fault there, but there is some good stuff in. So using the natural attraction and bring it back to the base considerations of being animal. What is the best thing to do at this time? What is the most beneficial? And how can I contribute and collaborate most with whatever's around me, whoever's around me, to further this situation most positively. Obviously, you can look back at a lot of business approaches in the existing capitalist approach, which is all about obviously extraction and development and etc. etc. And it doesn't take long before you can see many decisions or values that don't align with that life affirming stuff. So the questioning of the approach and of attractions, if some of these uber rich people, I'll rephrase that, there will be some people who, if they questioned truly, their why and their impact, they would not be able to allow themselves to make those same decisions in the same way again. If you think about the compromises that we allow ourselves to make as societies, that as an individual we wouldn't allow, we could take that into various ways, places of inequality and misuse of power, exploitation, and all the rest of it. I don't think I need to perhaps choose any examples, because I'm sure people can choose their own. So with that broadening of the why into, and why for the future generations, why for what is not yet here, the impact I have, the actions I have, what impact will it have on those future generations, is a very good example, could be a good example of that choice and that discernment between the intellectual process driven. Yes, if I carry on being consistent, I will triple my income. I will, develop my asset base, my portfolio, whatever it is, and you can be successful in doing that. And you think, well, okay, I've done that, and that has affected what and whom in what way. So those choices, they can be huge.
Yeah,
I wasn't expecting us to go down that route.
Yeah,
there you go.
I so resonate, and I appreciate that you bring out such a huge topic, because I think, like coming back again to conditioning and what we, like as a species, if you like, as a race, what we have built the society to our current form. And again, I'm not trying to put a general stamp, go, okay, this society looks like this, right? But just really what you said there, about the inequalities that we've built, or the exploitation, etc., is, I think has a lot to do with, again, the construct, right? Like we've been conditioned to believe, okay, if we don't exploit others, then I will not have enough profits myself. And it's okay to treat other people like this, right? Because look, that's what others are doing, and they're doing fine, right? And there's such a disconnection between actions and also how we feel.
Yep, absolutely.
Right.
I mean, with that example you were just mentioning there about following the example of others around you, because that's how to make money. And of course, if you don't, then those people who are making a lot more money than you. So there's this overriding of natural attraction because of the circumstances around you.
Yeah. And
so
and
before,
it just really takes a lot of trust, because when you trust how you feel, you're trusting life, right? Not some like, I understand this life when you don't trust how you feel. You can earn $3 million a year and have health issues, right? And you can earn, I don't know how much, maybe just enough to get by, like there's sufficient amount of money, but not 3 million. And I don't want to put a specific figure on it, but there is enough going around to provide for you and people you care about. And which one is better? right? Like,
Yeah.
we often go down to that route, well, if I don't make enough money, my competitors will make more than me, and like go down all the route of I'll be just squashed and I will not survive, right? But again, is that really true?
Well, of course, it can be true.
Yeah, it can be true.
There are very, very difficult life circumstances for many people in different ways, whether that's through their actions or not at all through their actions. That it can be incredibly challenging. And of course, with the best will in the world, whilst we can change how we accept and meet challenge, there are times when a positive mental attitude, for example, is not going to win everything, and in fact, falsely adhering to a positive mental attitude can actually be very damaging in the wrong situation. There are times when you do need to feel crap, and there are times when you cannot overcome everything. It's not all Disney. And I suppose the recognition is it kind of touches again on that consistency. Like, just because you always put in top-notch effort does not mean you will succeed. That dream of work hard and it will be fine is a myth. There are so many more factors. So, as discerning as we are, and as in contact with nature as we might be, I would imagine. I'm certainly not a master of any of these things. So even if I were in that vaulted situation, I wonder if I would still have shit days. I imagine I would.
Yeah, I think it's a moment for us not to glorify our lives, right? Even though that you and I can be perceived as, okay, we are maybe a little bit more advanced in our own relationships with the natural world. Maybe I'll just put it that way, right? But maybe, right? Because you have to communicate in a language, right? But does that mean life is always shiny? I think that's what social media is like. And now, particularly with pandemic, right? People spend more time on the social media. And I think what really, again, comes down to is following your natural attractions is not always easy. And of course, the easy is about the act of following. And there can be difficulties because when you look at nature, okay, you've planted the seeds and this plant is going to grow, right? And the attraction of the plant is to grow. It's just to see what the life is about, right? And there could be 1 year, all of a sudden, I don't know what that plant or tree might just lose a branch, right? But it continues to be there because there's life force, life intelligence there, and eventually it just grows. And I think really it takes a lot of trust. It takes a lot of courage even to follow the natural attractions when you don't immediately see actually there is benefits, like particularly monetary benefits. Like there is immediate benefit of following your attraction because of the feeling of connection, right? Connection to yourself, connection to life. And when you make that decision, you'll feel connected to others.
Yeah, which makes me actually, the way that you phrased that sprang to mind about mistaking, addiction, basically, being a replacement or a route, a false route back towards connection, to fill that missing connection.
Yeah.
And of course, with addiction, it is beyond attraction. It's into that need state. So we also need to I suppose this excuse me, it shows a cautionary tale, a cautionary aspect to just really checking and being sure of your confidence in the natural attraction, that it is actually natural attraction.
Yeah.
And of course, just to say that with the limb falling off the tree, we don't know how the tree feels about that.
Yeah.
It might actually be standing there for the next 100 years going, God, I missed that branch. That was my favorite branch. It's the one that when the wind caught it, it just itched that bit nicely. And now it's gone. And I'm just, because we don't know. We can sense into, we can imagine, we can interpret. But again, this is all highly, it is subjective, our bond to nature, our place, our feeling of where we are and how we connect. And it changes, I hope.
Yeah, definitely.
So Claire, I sense that might be a nice place to stop for the evening.
Yeah, I think so too. And I suppose just you asked me the question of how natural attractions interplay with natural presence and natural body, right? And I think I'll ask that question back to you and see what your thoughts are on this question.
Ask me the question again, please. I've forgotten what it was.
So how do natural attractions interplay with natural presence and natural body?
I feel that it's about some correctness. Because there's the weaving of the permission, consent. There is the boundary of natural body, whether that's a hard boundary or a soft boundary. There's a transition zone of some sort, or we choose to place our awareness as if there was one for convenience or to stop ourselves going completely mad. So that point of of permission, whether that's of yourself or however you see it, being that sensed place of correctness where flow is working well. The term flow is used in many places, but from a musician's point of view or a sports person's point of view, is that point of no, something like no thinking.
Yeah.
And it is just happening and it is flowing. And at that point, surely that, not surely, but I imagine that as being that point of unthinking grace, where everything that you are putting in is meeting well with everything that is being met. So we talked about the analogy of an archer and all the control you can put into your training, the quality of your bow, and all this, up until the point it leaves the bow. And after that point, all of your skill is now irrelevant because it is in the hands of fates or the gods or the wind or your imagination. So for me, they are the idea of nature communication, body and presence. It's a spectrum, and it's just a choice of almost a point of convenience to draw your awareness to a particular aspect of something that just is. It's a very soft transition from one aspect of those to the other for me. And even tomorrow we get into nature communication, of course.
I so like when you said it's with natural presence and natural body, it's just a transition to what is, right? And like you said, natural attractions for you is about that point without thinking. So when we don't think, it is just what it is, right? And I feel that phrase is, when we look at our life as what it is, it's so simple, and yet for humans it's so not easy, right?
Well, yes, we know we have the propensity or the facilities of regret and worry and all this, and we don't know that animals do or don't, but most of the behaviour will suggest that many of them don't. And they've obviously learned instinctual fear, but regret. Although that in the higher animals, dolphins, elephants. Actually, a whole bunch of them do. So it's the higher animals do, perhaps, and the lower ones don't. As that very sad tale of the whale and her calf. She was carrying the baby for 15 days after died. So there is obviously attachment there, but we tie ourselves up in knots unnecessarily by utilizing all these things.
Yeah.
So yes,
thank
you very much, Claire.
Yeah, and we'll do it again tomorrow for natural communication.
Indeed, same place, same time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Bye-bye.